Welcome to Architrave Gaming. I'm the Archmaster, Matthias. So, the Lord is very generous. I'm gonna tell you a bit about ideas I have, just random ideas, cool stuff. All trees being sticky. Okay, so I spend a lot of most days pulling out my phone, my ratty old broken thing, and just writing down ideas. I pull out my Samsung Notes app, and I'm like, all right, so all trees being sticky. Like, that's the title, right? And I just got this idea one time. I forget how and where I got it, but I'm just going to read you verbatim what I spoke into my Notes app. You fall down a tree and land safely because you just roll or slide down its sticky trunk. You can climb trees just by sticking to it and climbing up, almost like there's syrup or something really sticky flowing down the outside of it, like how maple syrup is in the inside of a maple tree. But what if that all floated on the outside? And of course, the leaves could be all sticky or totally dry or any number of things. Maybe the sticky syrup on the outside flows off to the leaves and then drips down or hangs down in these big long roping strands. Big long ropes of sticky syrup, and then they hang down like big tall U-shaped strands and ropes, the sticky forest. Anyway, that was an idea I had. I just got this idea, like, well, what if trees were sticky? What are the various things you could do with them? You could climb up trees. If you fall, it would break your fall damage, right? You could, stick things to trees, right? Just the idea, like, what if you had the sticky forest, right? And what if, they had like all the sticky stuff that went down and stuck on the ground where the wind blew it and like stuck to other trees or leaves and whatnot. So all these deck the halls with sticky syrup. And so, running through it might be a problem, or maybe you could like swing on them if you can manage to do that somehow, or like ride them like Tarzan, who knows? Like, just an idea for a sticky forest, right? One of my many random ideas, right? You get enough of those, and I have enough, trust me. Then you can have like a really unique world. It's like, look at there's the sticky forest, and you can flavor that however you want. You can be like, oh, it's all dark and sinister. This is like the blood and guts of humans mixed with spider webs, and it's this evil grimdark forest. It's like, yeah, sure, you can do that. Or it can be like literal maple syrup in the Feywild or something like that, however you want. Anyway, we're getting on to something else. Some of my favorite stuff is association magic, right? Where it kind of makes sense for something to happen here, so it does. Oh, that's so cool. Like the whole mountain thing where it's like, well, you break the mountain apart, and there's still some kind of association between the base of the mountain and the peak. And so if you, go up the tunnel that was on the inside of the mountain, you kind of appear at the base of the other one, and you can go up, right? Because they still are associated. The mountain doesn't know that it broke apart, right? So you travel up the tunnel, and you still get there, right? Stuff like that. So here's the idea where buildings naturally form. I might as well just read this one too, What if buildings naturally formed instead of being constructed? Not all buildings are constructed. Sometimes they just naturally form in the ground because of the strong presence and largeness of... actually, this isn't going to make any sense if I read it verbatim. I'll just tell you. So, I was driving down the highway, or I was in the passenger seat, and the driver said, "Oh, look, that I think it was a flea market. That flea market, sprung up here." And I was thinking, the flea market sprung up? What does that mean? Didn't someone build it? I was like, wait a minute, what if buildings just sprung up around something that kind of should be there? So say you're a merchant, right? And you're in the fantasy world. And by the way, this is all about tabletop adventure games and stuff like D&D. It'd be weird if you get to this point in the video, you're like, oh, that's what he's talking about. Anyway, I was thinking, what if you're a merchant, right? And you just go in, you find some spot on the side of the road, and you have a bunch of tables, and you put all your wares on the tables, and you ask people to come in and buy and sell. And so they're coming in, they're buying your stuff, you're doing trade, and you go to sleep that night, and the universe itself kind of realizes that, wait a minute, this dude's a merchant, he's selling stuff. You should sell stuff at a store. There needs to be a building around this thing. So while you're sleeping, a building just kind of manifests and grows around it. And you wake up and you're like, oh, I have a building now. It's sprung up. And so you do that for 10 years. You buy and sell until, you land on tough times and you have to move. So you pack up all your wares, you leave, and no one's buying and selling in the building anymore. So maybe it takes a week or a month or a year or, however. But instead of the building just turning to ruins or something, it just decomposes. It disappears. It dematerialized. So the idea that when there's some kind of person or activity or something going on in a certain place, the world will just naturally accommodate that thing. Do you realize the world building implications of this? You could do so much with this. Say you have a king with his army, right? And they're going across the land to attack another nation, and they stop for a rest. Well, the world's like, well, this is a king, he needs a castle. So they just kind of spawn a castle. Oh, there's an army, they need a barracks. They just build barracks, right? And it just happens. And then they get up and move on, and then the next day it just disappears and goes away. Like, do you realize what you can do with that idea? That, yeah, you can have the same old boring fantasy world we've always had where people have to build things and where's the nearby forest, and we have to chop it down and build a thing and blah, blah, blah. Like, you can do that. Feel free, go right ahead, no one's stopping you. But what if you did this? Right? It's fantasy, it's actually a fantastic idea. It's not mundane, it's not boring. It's fantastic, it's a fantasy idea, right? There's so many things like this where, why has no one done this? Why has no one put fantasy in their fantasy worlds, right? Do something cool. Anyway, next, after things spontaneously forming, what if, yeah, pepper. I don't like pepper. I like beef jerky though. I got a pound of beef jerky and 100 bullets for Christmas. That's a gift, all right. Anyway, what if cities come to wage war, right? You know, I was watching I think The Kingdom of Heaven, and so it was like all of Jerusalem has come to wage war. All of Jerusalem has come to wage war. It's like, well, no, just the people of Jerusalem, not the city itself. What if the cities got up and waged war? What if the cities actually got up to go fight each other? Wouldn't that be a cool idea? Anyway, moving on. Creatures getting larger with their rank or position. I saw this comic one time where there was, you know, it was two people in the army or something, and they're talking to each other, and you know, the joke is one of them had, like, you know, ticks off a Navy captain, and the captain outranked all of them, and so he's busting in the door, and he's like, you know, it's a comic, it's a cartoon, right? So he's super big and muscular and like 9 feet tall, and then he's like, he's super angry, and the other guys are there, and they're like, oh no, right? It was a comic, but I was like, why is he so much bigger than they are? He's huge, right? It's a comic, you know, that's the art style, but it's like, what if that was actually the way it works? What if when you rise in rank, you're like a captain or a king or some, you know, great hero or something? What if you actually got bigger when you rise in rank or position or authority or status somehow? That'd be kind of cool, right? And you can do that a couple of ways. You can say that, yeah, you just get bigger, so there's a tiny goblin, then a bigger goblin. The goblin chief is like man size maybe, or if he's like the goblin warlord, then he's bigger than a man. Or you can say that they actually transform, and that goblins and orcs and hobgoblins and whatnot, and ogres, you know, you pick a certain number of monsters. You say these are all actually the same type of creature. They just morph into a different creature, a larger creature, when they get promoted and reach higher status and have more people serving them, right? So that goblin turns into a hobgoblin and an orc and a bugbear and a whatnot, and he keeps getting bigger and bigger until he turns into an ogre or something, right? Anyway, that's just an idea of like, what if creatures get larger with their rank or position? Like, that's world building implications of that might be interesting, right? You can have, you know, the inner sanctum of the castle, of the palace, right, where the, you know, only the king can be. The king has this massive throne, and you can only be king if you can fit on that throne, and your butt, you know, touches both sides of the throne, right? If you're too small, well, that means you don't have enough status, you don't have enough rank, you can't sit on the big fat throne. Or like, you know, all the ceilings are super high and all the door frames are super tall, and you can't pass a door frame unless your head brushes the top, right? You have to show that you're tall enough. Like, you can do a couple things, or it could just be a little flavor thing in the world. Like, that's a cool idea. It's cool. You get enough of those, and the world becomes really interesting. It's kind of fantastic. Different city borders besides walls. Why are all of the city borders all just walls all the time? It's so boring. Just walls, really? That's all we can. All we can do? Okay, so what if there's a city on a hill, right? Instead of walls, what if they have a bunch of druids up there? And the druids, there's like a dozen of them, right? And this isn't just strictly 5e, this is, you know, fantasy, right? It's not using a certain game system, it's just the idea. So all these druids, they can make trees grow like super fast within 10 minutes, right? If they're all working together, you can grow up a whole redwood or an oak tree or whatnot super quick, right? So instead of walls, if anyone ever tries, you know, attacking them walking up that hill, they just say, hey, druids, grow some trees. We'll chop them down, just drop them on them. And yeah, the druids would have to be okay with chopping down trees, I think, under the circumstances they're okay with it. So you don't have city walls. You don't need city walls. The city is totally independent. We just roll enormous logs down the hill, one after another. People are coming up, and the trees are building and just being, the trees are growing and just being chopped down and rolled down the hill, and they just keep growing trees as much as they want. And that's your city wall. That's so much cooler. That's so much cooler than just, oh yeah, we have a wall, it's made of stone. It's like, oh, it's so boring. Let's have something cool. You can have a city wall made of, plants, plant growth, spike growth. A city wall made of bones, a magical city wall, like a force field or something. You can have a city wall of creatures. What if you had a dozen manticores, patrolling the outskirts of your city? You just have houses and buildings on the outside. You don't have any walls. You just have manticores flying around and patrolling. What if you had, underground burrowing creatures? There are dozens in D&D books, or not dozens, but there are plenty in D&D books. You can have a boulette or an antag or something. What if it was, zombies? You have like this row of zombies around your city, and they're all like impaled on spikes or something, and they're all just kind of stuck there, looking, facing away. So anyone who comes, they just you don't have to feed them, you don't have to clothe them, you don't have to take care of them. They just sit there and they act as a permanent wall, and no one wants to touch them because they get zombified, right? Cool. What if you had a field of weapons, like shields and spears and whatnot, and they get animated when anyone gets close? I don't need a wall. I just spread out, all the ancient old rusty swords from the last 1,000 years, and I just surround my city with them. And anyone who gets close, they come up and they fight them automatically. That's a cool wall, right? Do something cooler than just some stone, right? You can have, sure, we have like a moat. Like, you don't need a wall, you have a moat. But what if it's like a crevice? And what if they're like, hydras sticking their heads up or something? Or just a crevice. Just like, hey, you can't cross this. It's a giant crevasse in the ground and you can't get past it. What if your wall was earthquakes? Every time they pass this thing, the earth just quakes and pushes them back and knocks them prone and rolls them away. Like, what if, as they're getting close, the ground lifts up like a hill and you can't walk up and then it goes back down? What if that's your wall? What if it's weather? What if as they get close, the blizzard just automatically hits them, or just ice forms on the ground, they start slipping, or they just get frozen? Walls don't have to be boring. Anyway, I think that's all for this video. I'm just going to keep going to the next one. Feed the algorithm, like and subscribe and all that stuff. Text me, comment if you want to join the team and be a part of this stuff and help me actually make products with these crazy ideas. And Patreon if you want to support me and make sure I can do this actually full time, so we don't have to wait 10 years for me to actually build this stuff. God bless. Have a good day.